Right, this is not a drill. We are live here on the second podcast. We have some other additions, as I'm sure you would have seen in our lovely profile picture that we've added on. Our first addition is Ben Howell, who will be joining us. Ben won the Indoor Barebow World Team Championships back in 2000, and that year. Everyone would know, of course. It was a heavily contested competition. And we have Lachie Ruddell, who's joining us, who came second nationally in the indoor crossbow division. He was heavily contested. I believe there was two in the division. So we've got some high caliber archers with us today. Our first,
getting my name right as well.
That's all right, mate. I practiced it many times. So one of the things you guys might not know about Lachie is Lachie's worked in, I think he's probably the most experienced archery shop worker in the whole country, having worked in, is it 4 shops now?
Yeah, it would be 4, yeah.
Across how many states?
3.
3 states, right, okay. So Lachie's probably seen it all when it comes to working in an archery shop and dealing with archery equipment. So I guess the first thing we'd ask is probably what would make a good shop in your experience?
What I think makes a good shop is basically, it's archery, so bows and arrows. So you want to walk in and you want to see plenty of bows and you want to see plenty of arrows. It sounds silly, but really that's the crux of it. That's the instant draw. That's basically what you're there for. And then everything else is just, accessories and cream on top. You want to see variety, so basically everyone's got their favourite brands of bows and arrows. While a particular store might favour certain brands, you still need to have variety there, so that most brands are represented. So people have choice basically in seeing what they've been recommended or their friends have told them about, or brands that they've read about, or maybe just even a brand that they've used for a long time ago and they want to stick to that brand. So it's basically what you want to see.
Just having that variety of different brands within the store.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well. I don't think a lot of people realise just how much financial output it takes to make a shop like that. Even a small shop, you could walk in and there's $100,000 or $200,000 worth of stock on the shelves. It's a very big deal to try and get stock in for an archery shop. I think we do quite well in Australia, really, looking at, compared to places like, especially in the States, the amount of archery gear they move over there, just looking at how big and developed some of our shops are, because it's certainly a big output.
Yeah, I think definitely, especially with the way the US market, especially bows themselves, whereas every 12 months there's new models, there's new variations, with all manufacturers. They're all competing to have that edge to basically go, look at us, this is our this is next year's model, this, you got to have this basically. So for waiting times to get stuff on the shelves in Australia, and then to have it not even probably 9 months later, the bow manufacturers have released next year's bows. So somebody could be waiting, a month or even longer for their bow to be made. Let's say it's a 2019 bow, and then you get to October 2019, and they're announcing what all the 2020 bows are going to be. So keeping your stock on the walls fresh, with models that get outdated quickly, it's kind of tricky.
And some items as well. Especially some of the brands which are more popular, you've got to have, you've got to sell the thing 8 or 9 times to pay for it. Like, it's very, it's certainly not a lucrative business in some parts. But that's, yes, that's what happens with a small industry.
Yeah, especially with some of the high end ones. Like, a high end bow might retail for $2,500, and that's a big investment for a shop to pick and choose. Do I get it? Left-handed, right hand, this color, this power, this draw length, and hope that that's exactly what somebody's going to walk in and want.
Is it the right shade of purple?
Yeah, exactly right. I really like purple bows. I'm like, we've got pink in stock. If you want purple, it's a 6-week wait. for them to make it, and then probably another 2 weeks freight from America. So yeah.
So what would you say the biggest challenge working in an archery shop was?
The biggest challenge is probably just trying to keep your customers happy. And that's often really just having the stock then and there. So someone comes in with a bow with busted strings, and they want new strings, and option one is either they need to be made in store or you need to order them externally. And people, this day and age tend to want things, straight away. So it's about having a quick turnaround time. And depending where they are, they might be like, oh, I've blown up my bow. I've got a hunting trip booked next week, or I've got a tournament coming up. I need this thing back together. I need to be shooting so that I can make this competition. So, you could easily go, oh, that's not my problem. But really, we love archery just as much as, the people working in archery stores love it as much as, your customers do. So you kind of want to see them, make that movement or make that hunting trip, basically get them up and running again and out the door.
Yeah, and provide the best service you can. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah,
and I guess that's the thing as well, that with a lot of shops. I mean, people are kind of, they have the mentality of being able to walk into Bunnings or Coles or Kmart and just get what they want then and there. And unfortunately, archery is just not big enough to be able to have shops to be able to do that. So it's hard because you want to be able to give that service of providing the item or the service on the spot, but sometimes it's just not. I mean, if you were to try and stock everything, you'd go out of business because you just wouldn't sell it all. So it's hard to find that balance, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, everyone wants to walk into a store and just see the walls completely covered in gear. But yeah, if you want to be able to get things in for people when they walk in and say, oh, have you got this? And you're like, no, but I can order it for you. Then you need that. The store needs to have that cash flow to be able to order that for that person. You can't just say like, oh no, sorry, we just bought a pallet full of bows to fill the wall, and not have any accessories to go with it. In saying that, sometimes like the best thing you can do is actually set somebody up with a new bow from the beginning. So they walk in, they go, right, this is how much I've got. I want to buy a bow. I want to get it today. So you do what you can to basically find something that they're happy with in their budget, make sure that they're happy, get a couple of shots in, everything's set up right, they're strong enough to draw it, or it's adjusted so that they can draw it and shoot it comfortably, draw lengths correct, peep sights in the right position, everything's set up, arrow rest, ready to go, and they're happy to get out there and start shooting for the first time.
Yeah, and I guess that's a difficulty with a lot of shops too that don't have. I mean, looking in the few times I've been over to the States and looking at all the shops over there, pretty much all of them have a shop and an indoor range, and there's very few. I can think of like 2 shops in Australia that would have a range and a shop. So it's very hard. Like if you've never shot before, to just walk in, buy a bow, and try and figure out what you're doing without actually being able to shoot. So I guess it'd be difficult for the shops to train them. Yeah.
I mean, it's like anything, basically. It's like you have to put complete faith in the salesperson. If you don't get a chance to shoot it and feel happy before you leave, then you there's that little bit of an unknown that, or should I get this out and, go find a property or something like that, somewhere safe to shoot it and test it out for the very first time and hope I don't do anything silly. But when you've got the opportunity to go, all right, let's go and, in a safe environment, put some arrows down range, set up a target, especially with compound too, you can normally get people shooting groups. So straight away there's that instant, satisfaction that like, oh, I can actually do it. It's not that difficult. It's not scary. It's actually really fun, and you can, you actually experience the fun you had yourself getting into it that that somebody else is experiencing for the first time. So that's a bit of a buzz, I reckon. Having the opportunity to work in stores and just see that over and over, that buzz that people get from, that look on their face when they just hit the gold in the target for the first time.
Yeah, no, 100%. I can, definitely relate to that. There's been a lot of customers that come in and you really do get a great sense of, I don't know, pride's probably the wrong word, but satisfaction, I guess, of being able to pass on, like you said, that passion, and knowing that someone else is going to go out there and, hopefully have as much fun as we have, I suppose. So working in the shops, though, what would you say the most common item you would actually sell in the shop?
Funnily enough, I could probably quite easily say it would be screw-in field points. Screw-in target heads. Yeah. Don't ask me why. I don't know if they just, vibrate loose and people lose them, or if they, miss the target and they get wedged in something and they just unscrew it and leave the tip in the tree or whatever they've absolutely hit. But screw-in point seems to be one of the biggest ones. Second to that probably be boning blazer vanes.
Oh yeah,
really popular arrow vane. That's probably 1 and 2. And number 3 is probably ready-made, full length arrows. So beginners, just basically they've lost a couple out shooting somewhere, or damaged them or whatnot. So they basically just might not have the skills or might not be willing to make their own arrows up yet. So they just buy pre-made arrows.
All the budget,
perfectly fine.
Like the $10, $12 arrows.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something they can buy individually, not have to buy a dozen, just buy 1 or 2, even just take it home, see if they like it, and then come back and buy more, of the same type.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's probably similar. I mean, I've been, I've only had my shop for probably 12 months now, and it is, I think what I've found would probably echo that. Heaps of the pre-made arrows, lots of fletching glue. I don't know what they're doing with this glue, but heaps of Fletch type platinum. Yeah, stacks of it. Someone will come in and buy a dozen arrows and 3 tubes of glue. So I'm not quite sure whether they're.
Yeah, I mean it's good to hear that people are actually giving it a go, making their own arrows. It is satisfying. I know some people hate it, some people love it. Some people would come in and buy all the components. Other people would be like, all right, I want these vanes on these shafts with these points, and I want you to make them up. Pay for them now and give me a call when they're ready. So that's more of the archer that's just like more purely just shooting, rather than actually tuning and setting up of their own equipment, and that satisfaction comes with it.
Well, that's isn't that what you do a lot of, Richard, with your traditional arrows, setting up feathers and?
Yeah. So most of the time, for traditional stuff, it's just easier to learn how to do everything yourself for the arrow-wise. So when I get my arrows, I'll sort them into spine weights and then bare shaft them, get the nocks and the inserts all sort of squared up, and then I don't use fletching glue anymore. I use fletching tape. I just found that it's quicker and works better for feathers. Don't get me wrong, I mean, fletching glue works good too, but just for the ease of use and the durability, fletching tape was my go-to of choice. But yeah, so doing your own arrows and everything, definitely a big part of traditional archery. It sort of brings it closer to the spirit of traditional archery by being a bit more primitive, a bit more sort of back to the basics of it. But no, yeah, it's just definitely a good part of it.
Yeah, on the feather tape too, that's an interesting point, because that's something I found. I think we both started using it around the same time, because I hated fletching feathers. It was just the worst thing. But yeah, I found because fletching spin wings is easy, because you just put double-sided tape on, smack them on the arrow, hope they're in the right place, and if you hear that noise, they've fallen off.
It's the best time you
That's right. But if you're using that on a feather, so I did that for indoor nationals with compound last year, and I was kind of wary, thinking, I'm putting sticky tape on a vane that's going to be traveling at a decent speed. And it worked really well. I wouldn't turn back from using bear paw. Bear paw's good. Boning makes another type of feather tape, and they've got a little dispenser which is pretty good as well. But I reckon that's the way to go with any feathers. It's that double-sided tape. It's so easy. And then there's no wait time for gluing or any of that stuff too.
It definitely saves a lot of time when you got 2 dozen arrows to make for a tournament.
Would you use it on a wood arrow as well?
Yeah, so most of my ones when I started were on wood arrows. They're generally on aluminium or carbon now, but I found they held up the same, if not better, because there was a bit more roughness to sort of stick to instead of the soft like aluminium. And they hold up the same. Like I put arrows, not intentionally, like into the target butts behind it, and things I wasn't actually aiming for accidentally. I think out of probably a couple thousand shots and quite a few arrows, I think I've only had maybe 1 or 2 feathers come off.
Yeah, right.
Tape. And especially helps if you just put a tiny bit of tape just around the start of the feathers where that prickly bit is. Just helps them stop lifting off. So it's definitely nice little trick to do to save your time and arrows.
Stops them cutting into your hand when you're shooting a horsebow off your hands as well. That's that's the least pleasant experience, shooting a feather off your hand and looking down and going, oh, there's part of the vein and it's now in me. Excellent.
Bleeding.
Traditional archery for the win.
But they fly.
Yeah, I think the other thing,
you can't forget that.
I was just going to say, the other thing about, fletching with feather tape is, if everything's set up, you can fletch a dozen arrows in maybe half an hour if you're using feather tape.
Oh, totally, yeah.
If you've got everything ready to go, it's pretty quick.
Yeah.
You don't have to invest in 12 bits and burger jigs.
Yeah, that's exactly right, yeah.
Otherwise,
whereas if you're gluing and leaving each feather to dry, probably 10, 15 minutes before rotating the next one. And that's that's more like, 45 minutes minimum per arrow, and you've got a dozen to do. It's a huge time saver.
Well, if you're looking at doing it properly, you'd spend over $1,000 on just fletching jigs alone to do it quickly. Whereas with feather tape, you just get the one jig. Plus, it's going to be more consistent too because you've just got the one jig angle. Whereas trying to get a dozen jigs the same it's never going to be quite right. So,
well, like on that point, most time when I use for fletching for my traditional arrows, I use the Joe Jan 6 arrow fletcher. So I found by the time I just tape the first arrow up, by the time I get to the 6th one, I'm ready to just flick the first one around again. So it's just a continuous cycle of putting a feather on, going to the next arrow, just repeat. I mean, 6 arrows is done in 5 minutes, maybe. Yeah.
So we're talking to the best fletcher.
More time for shooting.
Very comfortably.
That's a very quick... Have you taught Levi how to fletch yet?
Not just yet.
He's still
carry arrows around, being 1 3/4. He hasn't quite learned to pull them yet or fletch them, but he can definitely sort of pick them up and bang them together and walk around with them.
I reckon by 1 7/8 he'll be all good. That's my estimate.
1 11/16, maybe.
I'll get him I've got him a bow. I'll get him a multi-fletching jig for his next birthday.
Yeah, it'd be good.
And Ben's prepared some notes for us in the background. So today was day one. Day one of Youth Nationals. I knew that. Okay. So we had, was it recurve target?
Yeah. So today to start with, we had the male and female recurve shooting target. Some of the pretty notable scores for the cub male recurvers. We had Brandon C with a 13.44 for a 40 meter 14.40. That's pretty much outstanding.
That's up there, jeez.
And then we had Finn Tobin from Victoria, who came in second at that same round by 11 points with a 13.33. So those are just 2 amazing scores. Impressed to see that sort of competition coming out of our young archers.
I remember being a cub in 1200 being a big deal.
I remember hitting the target every time being a big deal.
I think my first tournament as a cub, I remember having my sight backwards, aiming at a tree. I think I scored 850. I thought, that's pretty good, 800 points. Then they're like, nah, mate, it's out of 1440. Like, guess there's a few more on the table.
I remember shooting always for my first tournament. In the intermediate male barebow, we had Hugo Lobb, who was probably the most promising barebower in Australia at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Coming in with a 13.15 for a 40 metre 1440 as well. So that's literally some of the best shooting out of a barebower we've seen in Australia. We then had in the cadet male recurve category, we had Eddie Upston finishing with a 12.33 for his 70 metre 1440.
And shout out to Alec Farmer coming in second. Alec's a big fan of the podcast. He's listening to every one we've produced so far. He's very dedicated.
It was very solid shooting by Alec too.
So shout out to Mr. Farmer.
And for our final, in the junior male recurve, all three medal winners were very contentious in the 90 metre 1440 with a total of 17 points between the three places.
Yeah, right. That's different to what we've had in the past. So there's been junior nationals where there's literally been a spread of like 150 points
between first and second. Sometimes.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool to see that.
They're really getting up there now.
Because I think it's hard if we have big gaps between first and second. Like, it's cool to have that. It's good, but it kind of, I don't think it really keeps you on your toes. Whereas if you've got a day of full competition, because if you're used to, I guess, shooting domestically, if there's such big gaps between scores, as soon as you go overseas and there's 1 point to separate 4 or 5 places,
it really gets you.
Yeah, so I think it's good having our juniors shooting scores that close, so they're getting used to that kind of every arrow counts mentality. Yeah, so that's good to see.
And then in our field round, sorry, what was that, Lachie?
I was going to say, do you think that's like a sign of things to come? Like, basically, the sport's growing in Australia, things are getting more competitive, scores are getting closer, things are just becoming a bit more serious, a bit more on par with Europe and the US?
Yeah, I reckon. I mean, looking from a senior, well, I say senior perspective, but there's plenty of juniors involved as well. I mean, looking at our last World Champs and Olympic trials, 2015, 2016, we had 4 people that shot the MQS, and the MQS wasn't, particularly high. And now this time we've got, I think, a higher MQS, and we had 7 or 8 at our last trials, and quite a few people just below it. Yeah. So it seems in the last 2 or 3 years, I know in recurve especially, there's been quite a few, and that's on male and female, quite a few more starting to come through the ranks. And they're all, there's juniors of cadet or 20 and under level that are shooting competitive enough scores to be able to take on the seniors as well. So something's changed in the last year or two that started to lift this second wave of archers, I suppose.
Yeah, it's great to see.
Yeah.
Alec, do you want to just explain what an MQS is for people that quite aren't caught up on the archery terminology?
Fair.
Point.
All right. Hey, MQS. So MQS is a minimum qualifying score. So normally when we have trials for teams, your MQS, like your first stage, would be getting 3 or 4 or 5 minimum scores. So say, so if you go to World Cup in recurve male, 640 or 650 is normally the cut to make the top 104. So your qualifying score would be set at least 640 or 650. So stage 1 is showing you're good enough to be able to go there and get through stage 1, basically have a shot at competing in match play. And then after that's when you go through your trials and matches and they kind of whittle it down. So your MQS is your minimum qualifying score.
Then when we go into the field round today, which was shot by our compounders, in intermediate female compound, we had Tasman Forest finish the day on a 393. So just 7 points shy of that 400, which would have been incredibly impressive to see, especially coming out of a, I think, 13-year-old girl. I think.
Yeah.
So one of our youngest archers to shoot above 390, I think,
quite
ever.
high, yeah.
Then in cadet female compound, we had Alyssa Mollema and Caitlin Howden separated by 9 points with a 389 and a 380 to finish the blue peg round as well. In junior, I believe it was cadet actually, we had Rory Blake and Dani Oosthuizen with a 4-point difference between them with a 406 and a 402.
Sorry, can you just pronounce the last name again?
I cannot pronounce that last name again. It was a little bit outside my vocal range. But yeah, 406 and 402 out of, I think, 2 boys that are 15, maybe 16 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy.
considering back when we were those ages, you'd see kids shooting 370s, 380s, and they were, the best. To see those scores nowadays is very, very impressive.
I remember when field archery was good when you hit every target every time. And now they hit every yellow every time.
That's just
that's down.
Yeah, I think we're getting old now, Ben. Back in my day, I remember when if you came back with all your arrows, you only hit maybe 2 or 3 trees. It was a success. So
as long as you got the arrow back out, you'd won.
Yeah. I remember shooting. Was I with you at Morwell? You and Adam when I shot my ACEs?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I pinballed one off a tree.
Off 3 trees to be exact.
Okay, 3 trees. Yeah, let's just be real specific. Thank you. And I believe it was a 1.
I think you hit the 1 or the 2.
I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
And pinball archery. Pinball archery can be done. Not recommended, but is possible.
Big shout out to Easton's ACEs, by the way. Very tough arrows. It's very impressive.
They have been heavily tree tested.
What made you pinball it, Alec?
Oh, it was a gust of wind and a flock of pigeons flew through. There was a small child ran in front of the target and everything happened.
I think I tripped and actually pushed him over. I think he was on the ground when he shot the arrow, pretty sure. It was very impressive shooting.
Just generally whatever it was wasn't my fault and was out of my control. Otherwise it would have been a 6, I'm sure. That's how I'm going to look at that story, I think.
Ben, wasn't there a time when you were shooting unmarked field and you ranged your target but didn't move your sight and managed to actually bounce one off the dirt?
Yep. A
the
good
5
old
or 6 ring.
Round back, good old round back in 2016. I remember that. We just shot our 15-meter bugs and I'd actually had a pretty poor end. I think I shot like a 13 on it. So I was a bit unhappy going up onto the next target, which I'm pretty sure was about 45 meters. So I ranged it and I guess it was about 43, 45, sort of in that range. Didn't move my sight because you don't need to move a sight to shoot a target. That's ridiculous.
No.
It's not sighted recurve. Like, geez. I shot my arrow and I remember watching it hit the dirt and looking away in a lot of shame. And then I had one of my target mates who I think might have also been by the name of Lachlan. And he pointed, I think he pointed out that I'd actually shot a 6 or a 5, and that sort of lifted my spirits for the day. That was probably one of my better rounds that year.
I don't think I was in your group. I think I was maybe 30 metres away and I sort of...
True.
Pretty quickly.
You might have seen me almost throw my bow, probably.
I can't remember who was in your group. I think it was you and Nikki Stewart and someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right, actually.
Did you try and pinball it again?
No. I think I put that arrow back in my quiver, and I don't think I shot it for the rest of the day just to be safe.
Well, Ben and I are going off to shoot a 3D round tomorrow down at Cape Shanks. We might try and pinball some bears and some crocodiles, I reckon.
I think that will be happening regardless.
Yeah, I think Ben can try that, and I'll go off his results, I think.
Fair call.
Let's see how we go.
We'll fill you in on the next podcast.
Yeah.
I hope you're using $12 arrows and not $38 arrows.
That's okay. It's old carbon ones. Tough arrows again. Shout out to Easton.
Mine have almost all of their fletchers, so they're good.
Mine were fletched a month ago and shot a month ago as well. So
they're a minimum of 2 to 3 fletchers per arrow, so they're pretty well tuned. So I guess that'll probably wrap up our Youth Nationals talk. So tomorrow I think compound and recurve swap around.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll have another podcast dropping Monday where we'll discuss Youth Nationals further. So one of the things we spoke about last time was cheap arrows versus expensive arrows and the differences between them. So touching back on that topic, one of the ways I guess you set up a set of shafts, obviously you have to install the components, fletch them, do all that kind of stuff. Is we might, I'm not going to say go around the circle, that sounds a bit weird, but we'll go around the group and just see how you guys set up arrows. So Lachie, if you want to kick us off, so you've got a set of arrows, you've got your shafts, you've got your points, pins if you're using them, fletchers, all that kind of stuff. What do you do to those arrows?
Look, I think definitely from now on I'll be using a ASD, which is arrow squaring device, to basically make the end of the pointy end of the arrow that's been cut on an arrow saw, which often aren't very square at all. ensures that squares that up. So basically, when you glue in your insert, whether or not you're using field points or broadheads, but everything is as square as possible, and your arrow is going to fly as true as possible. In terms of your fletched end, I've got a bit of a process I go through. It doesn't matter if it's a cheap arrow or an expensive arrow, or actually with gloves and dust mask, give the shafts a light sand.
Oh, yeah.
Just to basically make that surface, instead of being like a glossy sort of, whether it's carbon or aluminium, just to give it, like you're painting a house basically, you give it a bit of texture, give basically your glue something to grab onto. So I give them a light sand, and then I actually acetone that area down with paper towel twice, so that you're not getting any residue on the shafts, and just taking my time, using a sort of a standard amount of glue, not too much, not too little, giving it plenty of time to dry, and then basically checking all your fletches, make sure that there is no gaps, and each fletch is schmick and onto the next one, and yeah.
And what fletching glue would you use for that?
At the moment, if I'm using feathers and I don't want to use the feather tape's working really well at the moment. I actually use either boning fletch type platinum or Tarzan grip, the one that actually has the flexible properties. So, and a Loctite have come up with a similar product now too, where it's designed to absorb shock and impact. So it's actually got a bit of a flex to it, even once it's fully cured. Otherwise, I'm using something like very thin, like a Loctite.
Control gel, or
which one it is? No, not control gel. It's it's actually quite runny, and just a very thin bead. So basically, you're not. It's that bond between the shaft, the glue, and the vein, without having too much in there to take too long to dry. I found that gets the best results.
And I think one thing people do as well with glue is they kind of feel like they've got to put heaps more to get it to stick better. But I think I'm not an expert on it, but like because I know when I put on a vein, I just do dots up and down the actual vein itself. But if you just do a big, like a massive thick bead all the way along, it's something to do with the air pockets, like it tries to bubble out or something. Yeah,
I think that is right, because there is actually super glue which is not available for commercial use, because if you got it on your fingers and as soon as there's no oxygen between your two fingers, it would literally just glue your fingers together. So obviously you don't want everyone in the emergency department all the time trying to get their fingers unglued. So they don't actually have that stuff on the shelves of hardware stores.
Does suck.
Yeah.
So the stuff that's readily available isn't quite as fast acting. So, but that's right. Yeah, if you use a thinner bead, or even do three little dots along your vein, and spread it out with something like a round nail, so you've just got a very thin layer of glue, and then apply that with pressure, hold pressure on your fletching vein, and you'll know straight away, if you can't rip that vein off with your fingers, if you're going to have one sacrificial vein, then, you're doing the right thing, basically.
Yeah. Okay. And Richard, you're up. What's your arrow prep routine?
So it's pretty much the same as Lachie's. I mean, there's not a ton of variants you can do to change things up. But in terms of setting it up, I don't do too much until I bare shaft it for my trad bows anyway. So test the spine, see if it's weak or soft, cut it back if it's too soft, to stiffen it back up, and then that's when you start squaring off the shafts and putting the tips in there and fletching and all that. But mine's pretty much the exact same as Lachie's towards end setting up.
And do you have a preferred glue?
Even though you're using timber shafts, you sort of have a similar process to how you actually fletch your arrows. It's all, lots of preparation before you actually fletch up.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the exact same no matter what sort of shafts you're using. You don't need to rough it up as much with the sandpaper if you do it all. To put glue on, because like with fletching tape, it sticks anyway, and being wood, it adheres a bit better anyway. So don't have to do that much, and you don't have to square the shaft because you taper the point anyway with the wood. So don't have to do that as much either. But yeah, it's pretty much the exact same all the way around.
When you were putting on vanes, I remember coming to your place a few years ago and seeing some carbon ones with some impromptu right helical, left helical, all sorts of things that just kind of happened. Was that the hardware store 99-cent super glue, wasn't it?
It sure was, and then I think I went and shot them for State Field the weekend, I believe, too.
Would you recommend 99-cent hardware store super glue?
In a pinch, I would. It's not the most. I think it's made to be used for our
arrows.
archery. Yeah, on arrows.
Yeah.
But I mean, like it works, but it's like anything; it's not meant for it. So it's not going to work as well as like fletch tight if you're going to use proper glue.
Yeah.
So I'd highly recommend using the proper things, the proper application.
All right, and Ben, what's your?
So I shoot Olympic recurve, so I don't really glue my fletchers on much anymore. I'm a big fan of spin wings. But yeah, same again as Lachie. Like I like to cut them to the length I need. I want to square them off. I chuck my pins in, my nocks. I fletch the arrows up. Make sure that all the fletchers are sitting right. If they're not, you can literally just strip them off again. Just wipe down that side, re-fletch it just till they're all perfect. And then what I like to do is I like to actually weigh the arrow at that point. So that's when I like to match them with the best point weight to get them all as close as I can. So my goal is usually to have my dozen arrows or 2 dozen arrows within as close a weight as possible. For a dozen, it's usually half a grain. For 2 dozen, it's usually a grain. Just really depends what I'm setting them up for. Like if I'm setting them up just to be shooting in practice and some local tournaments, then you don't get too in depth about it because at the end of the day, it comes down more to how you shoot them than to how they're actually set up. So if you set them up poorly but you shoot them amazingly, they're going to fly okay. If you shoot them poorly and set them up amazingly, they're going to be poor. They're just going to fly poorly because at the end of the day, what you do matters more. Once I've done that, I like to match them up. That sometimes involves taking a bit of weight off the point. Sometimes it involves putting a bit of glue in the shaft and actually sliding some paper down or just adding extra glue to the back of the point. Whatever you can and whatever you need to do to make sure that your arrows are as close to competition ready as they can be. When I do fletch with hard vanes, so like if I'm shooting compound or if I'm setting up a set of arrows for bear bow or something like that, then as like Lachie and Richard was saying, like I like to fletch them up and like really tug at them, like I'll twist them, I'll do everything because at the end of the day, if that fletch isn't going to stay there, there's no point leaving it at that point. Like you should always make sure that they're going to stay on as best as they can. And that did used to get on my dad's bad side as a kid, especially when I would fletch for 3 hours and be complaining the entire time about how long it was taking. And then I would end up, taking 8 fletchers off and having to spend another hour fletching those as well. But it was what I did just to make sure they worked as well as they could. Yeah.
But that was with glue-on vanes. It took that long.
Yeah, with glue-on vanes. Yeah.
Yeah, it is certainly a lot easier using spin wings.
Mm.
I've noticed a lot of shops and archers and stuff kind of complain about spin wings being harder, but it's so much easier than vanes. It is when you put them on. I think using the biter tools are really good as well. The biter tri-liner. So if you once you build your arrows, so you put the pins in your nocks on, or just nocks, whatever you're using, and then if you put them into the tri-liner, draw the lines on, and then use a biter wing holder to make sure your tape's spot on. That's quite easy. I mean, once you've got your lines, get a Sharpie or something drawn on your arrow, you can literally walk down to the target and back and stick the arrows on. Stick the fletchers on. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Lachie said, using the arrow squaring device is really good too. I think that's super critical if you're going to use broadheads, but I do it on all my X10s and target arrows as well. It takes you like an extra 2 to 3 minutes. Probably not even to do a set of arrows, so it's pretty easy.
It's like 2 seconds an arrow, really.
Yeah. And with the matching weights, there is the cheat way, which I do because I'm too lazy to put bits of hot melt in my arrows, is basically if you just get a dozen arrows and your dozen points, weigh all your points, lay them out from heaviest to lightest, weigh all your shafts, do the same. and then you just match your heaviest arrow to the lightest point and go up and down the line, and you'll cut out a couple grains of variation straight away from doing that.
That will get you within a grain pretty much every single time, unless you've got one big outlier. Yeah. But that's not very common, really.
No, and it is interesting, the actual difference. I mean, I experimented with 100 grain points for a little while there, and 120 grain points, and I remember shooting both of them at 70, and like one's the top of the gold, one the bottom of the gold, and that's 20 grains at 70 meters. So it doesn't, I don't know, some people make a big deal out of it, but I think it's, I don't know, it's a lot of work for something you could go and shoot into a tire or a tree. So, I mean, it's certainly a long process to get them bang on. But
I guess it can come down to, like say if you're shooting 70 meters in the Rio Olympics, or it's all that effort, everything you've gone to. You don't want to be let down by an arrow or a part of your arrow. In the same way, I suppose a hunter doesn't want to be let down by, all the effort they've put into for, going on a hunting trip and finally lining up a shot and having it all come together. It's the same as target archery, all the money and time you've invested to get where you're going, to be let down by one arrow or one fletch coming off is pretty devastating. So it's a pretty important part of archery.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, I'm lazy in that stuff now. I used to do it ages ago, but I mean, I don't know. I set them up properly. I set up other people's arrows better than I set up the ones for myself. But I guess it's just one of those things. It's archery. You can spend so many hours with everything. Yeah. I mean, literally down to how many strands you have in your string and that kind of stuff, and rest height by a millimeter lower or higher. So it just...
Some people will change nocks every tournament. Like, it just depends how much time and money you have and are willing to put into what you're trying to succeed at. And
some people just enjoy doing that, and if that's why they like that side of archery. Like, I've heard a lot of people that kind of like tinkering with their bows and changing stuff. You hear other archers go, "Oh, stop tinkering." It's like, well, maybe that's what they enjoy. Like if that's what you like,
they're going to keep coming back and having fun. That's what they should be doing.
Yeah, I know heaps of people that come down to the shop, or before I started my shop, that would
shoot 3 dozen arrows.
Well, have just heaps of bows and put them in the press all the time, and they'd spend more time in the bow press than they do shooting. But if that's what you like, I mean, we do it for fun. If that's what they enjoy, then go for it.
Yeah, there's definitely all types. There's the tinkerer that spends more time tuning and finding things to change than actually putting arrows down range. There's people that don't do anything and just literally would be happy to just shoot arrows the whole time, even if their setup was a little bit out or a lot out. And then there's people, I think, in between who do a bit of tuning, get things reasonably right, but ultimately enjoy putting lots of arrows down range and enjoying it for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good perspective to keep in mind.
And there's always different phases. Like if you're, just from my own experience, if you're an Olympic recurver and you get, the brand new newest bow, tinkering with that is something that it's just indescribably enjoyable. It's just so much fun. Whereas, if you're, shooting an older model bow, it's 3 or 4 years old, you might be like, oh, well, whatever, I'm just going to go shoot my arrows because that's going to be a bit more fun. I'm not, you might have done everything you thought you could do with it. And at that point, you're like, okay, now I can just shoot. And that's what I'm going to do. Yeah,
and it is true as far as if people are in a bit of a slump or they're shooting and they're not enjoying it, or just, I mean, I'm biased running an archery shop, but I'll throw it in here anyway. Just buy a small piece of gear. You don't have to change your whole bow. But, new finger tab, new release, new sight pin, different fletches, whatever it happens to be. It is amazing how changing a small piece of equipment can kind of bring back that enjoyment. And I mean, archery is so broad in the equipment that it's a shame to kind of narrow down your... limit your views of this is what works, this is what I know, this is what I'm going to use. And I think a lot of people are afraid to kind of experiment and step outside of what is the norm. But there's so many cool pieces of gear and stuff to play with that why not? If it's,
Sometimes,
crack.
sometimes you just need to do that. Like sometimes switching, like I know in the past I switched nocks and found that I actually shot. I really liked how they shot. Felt I was shooting really well.
Was that biter to Eastern?
Yeah, I went from biter asymmetrical size 2s to the Eastern pin nocks. And I really liked how they shot. I really liked how they felt coming out of the bow. About 6 months later, I decided, okay, I'd actually run out of nocks at that point of those nocks. And I had some biters. I just went, I'll just flip them over just to kill some time till I can get some new nocks. And found that, like, for some reason, my groups had tightened back up again. So I'd gone from shooting 30 meters, shooting, 50 to 56s, so most of my arrows out of 10, but getting a few in there, to being back in that like 55 to 60 point range, just brought them back in again. And I think it was just sometimes you need to change something that you're so comfortable with to get a new sensation. And once you go, okay, wait, no, this sensation isn't for me, going back to that old piece of equipment actually lifts your game. It actually makes you a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, Richard likes to change compound bows every 2 weeks for that reason.
Yeah.
So he's
a brave man.
He's found that.
No comment.
That's why he has a longbow, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing, changing to 2-inch spin wings a little while ago from 1 3/4, and I'm back shooting 1 3/4 now. But, yeah. I mean, yeah, just the same thing. Hey?
Very nice.
Nothing.
There's the Easter egg of this podcast. Yeah, it's one of those things. It is just worthwhile to change something small up, and it's not let's go spend $2,000 on a new bow. It's go spend $20 on a packet of vanes, or change your sight pin, or just anything, because everyone likes new stuff, and it keeps you enjoying it. And if it means that you're trying to reach an arrow total for the week and you're kind of behind and you're not all that motivated, and it's a $20 item that gets you over the line, you probably spend that much in petrol just getting to the range and back a couple times. So it's good to give yourself that extra little motivation burst, I suppose.
Yeah, I remember there was
I think...
Go on, Lachie.
So much of it is trial and error. And, yeah, sometimes you have to actually spend a little bit of money to try something different to see if it makes a big difference in, in shooting or scores. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You go.
Yeah, Alec.
Oh, this is awkward. You don't know until you put it on the bow. It is tough. Like a lot of people, one of the most difficult questions at work is people coming in and going, "Oh, how will this shoot?" or "How will this work?" And it's like, well, I don't know. It'll either be really good or it'll not be good, and you don't know until you try. Like there's so many different types.
Yeah, I remember a 5-month period where I would turn up to tournaments every single weekend, and every single week I would have I'd be using I had 2 bows at the time, and I'd be using one of the 2. No one could ever predict which one it was, and every time I saw someone there that I hadn't seen the week before, they'd be like, "Oh, is that a new bow?" But
it's
just
a
made
Tuesday.
it more. Yeah, it's Tuesday. I felt like a red one was a good one. No, it was just like they had different feelings, and sometimes if I felt a bit stronger, I felt like I wanted to shoot my red HBX, my Hoyt HBX, and then sometimes when I felt like I had a bit more control, I wanted to shoot my Prodigy RX. It just depended on the day, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't worry about what other people say too. Like, perfect example is if, using whisker biscuit and somebody says, whisker biscuits, they're crap, they're terrible. And you say, well, what is it that you didn't like about it? And they're like, oh, I've never had one. I'm like, well, how do you know unless you've tried it? Because there is definitely a lot of pros to having a whisker biscuit as opposed to something else.
But it was on the internet. The internet said it was bad. It's true, Lachie. Yeah. It was on FaceTube and Google Books.
I saw someone use it and they didn't shoot a 10, so it must be bad.
Yeah, I've actually tried putting a whisker biscuit on my Alpha burner and shot through it the other day, and it was pretty good. Like, yeah, considering the ease of being able to carry your bow through the bush, I rate them. They're good.
Yeah. Yep.
Solid arrow rest.
Because you said there was a video of some guy a while ago, I remember you were telling me, where he was shooting it somewhere in America and it was frozen or something, and he was still able to shoot.
Yeah, so I could lose power here in a minute, guys, just letting you know. But basically, in America, you're doing a lot of hunting out of tree stands. And there was a guy had written an article about the pros and cons of using a whisker biscuit, and basically was saying, look, he's shooting deer out of a tree at like 20 meters. The bow has started in for that. The whisker biscuit's not going to let him down. There's no mechanical moving parts to freeze up in the snow. They're going to stop that moment from being successful. So for him, whisker biscuit was the exact right thing he needed to do what he was doing. And that can apply easily in Australia too, in harsher climates, either cold weather or wet weather, snow. It's simple. There's no moving parts. So if you are out bush for 2 weeks and don't even see another human being, it's not like you can just go down to the corner store and buy a new drop-away rest.
Yeah, that's right.
So sometimes simpler is better.
Yeah, definitely.
And like on that, it's a bit of peace of mind as well, because having used a whisker biscuit as well, just knowing the arrow is sort of locked in there and safe. You don't need to look down to make sure it's ready to go when you're drawing.
Yeah.
Whereas I found sometimes with a drop away, you got to look down and make sure it's actually sitting inside that cage a bit before you draw it, and then you look up, the animal's moved, it's gone. Whereas the whisker biscuit, you can just leave it, look at the animal, do what you need to do.
Yeah. For my hunting setup, I actually practice loading the arrow into the arrow rest, which is a whisker biscuit, with my eyes actually focused downrange. So basically, I'm knocking the arrow into the string, into the D loop, into the arrow rest, hooking on with my release aid, all without looking down. So basically, if you're simulating what you're doing hunting, you're keeping an eye on your game.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's certainly. Yeah, I think it's been knocked a lot on the internet, but I don't know. I'll have to shoot it a bit more and actually test properly. But I certainly think there's a lot more value in them than what they're, advertised as.
Lost him.
All right, so we're sitting at the 51-minute mark, so we might start to wrap it up. Is there anything anyone else wants to add before we finish off?
No, I feel like it's been pretty well covered for tonight.
Yep,
It was
cool.
good chat.
We'll try and get another one out on Monday with Kane and Hamish. I have to think of a good intro for Kane before then. So the other thing is we've had some very dedicated listeners who have listened to every single podcast so far, be it only one. So I'd like to give a shout out to Amanda and Neil Barkway and Caleb Barkway, who will be travelling back in the car, hopefully listening to this podcast. I think it's just... No, I believe it's just those three in the car travelling back. I don't think there's anyone else we need to mention.
I think that's it.
That's it, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Excellent. We might do another shout out on next one if we get anyone else interested. And if anyone has some topics they'd like us to mention on the next podcast, you can drop us... how do we do this? Do we make everyone message Heartland Forge?
I can just comment on the podcast below because it normally comes up.
True. So if you go into the Podbean account, you can drop us a comment on there, stuff you'd like covered in the next podcast. We are on Spotify now as well, and we are almost on iTunes. So I think you can comment on there, but that stuff we'll find out down the track.
Or you can message Heartland Forge.
Or you can just spam Heartland Forge. Send them whatever you... If you're just feeling lonely, drop them a message. Richard is here to chat.
I'm always open to say hi and ask how you've been. It's all good.
Listen to that. He's lovely. What a man.
Lovely.
Especially if it leads to a sale.
All right. We will sign off there, and we will see you all later.